Okay, we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. I do not have any agenda changes or agenda updates this evening. With that, I will ask the clerk to call the roll. Clerk Gamow.
Oh, that would help.
Thank you very much, Clerk Gamow. With that, I'm going to ask everybody to stand, turn things over to Mr. Kelly for the prayer and pledge. Mr. Kelly.
Hoffman. Okay. Thank you, dear Lord, for everything you give us, and I ask you on this day to open our eyes so we can see, open our minds so we can think, most of all, open our hearts so we can care about each other. Take care of our first responders, our troops that are protecting us overseas, and guide us to do the right thing on this date. In Jesus' name I pray, amen.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hoffman. So our first item of business tonight, I'd ask my friend Bo Cheney to come on up if he doesn't mind. Tonight, we're just going to present the Chairman's Service Award to Bo Cheney. A little background on Bo. He's the firefighter in the city of Rockford, but he has about the coolest, I guess, side passion that I see going in our community. We've talked a lot over the last few years about growing engagement with our youth, in particular our minority youth, and connecting them and exposing them to career pathways related to police and fire, and exposing our young people to opportunities that may be before them in the future. And Bo didn't just talk about it, he actually wrote kids' books about this topic, and he makes it cool, and he goes around and works with a lot of area youth, and in fact, I believe he travels in the region and in the Midwest to kind of connect kids to these opportunities, which is a challenge in our community, and I think it's a really important service he's providing our community and also in many others. So I got to know Bo when we talked a little bit last summer around Read 815 and the idea that we want to create a reading culture in Winnebago County, the idea that we need every kid reading at grade level by the time they leave third grade. If they do, we know every statistic in life is in their favor. If they are not reading at grade level at the end of third grade, we know that every tough statistic long term, they are fighting an uphill battle. And so this is important stuff. Bo has an awesome way about having a really important conversation. So if you don't mind, Bo, I'm just going to present this with you, and then I'm going to let you chat with to the county board here for a few minutes. I, Frank Haney, chairman of the Winnebago County Board, hereby recognize Bo Cheney for his commitment to introducing area youth, in particular minority youth, to public safety career pathways. Bo Cheney represents the very best values of our community and serves as a great example of what our community deserves and its citizens. So thank you, Bo, for everything you do. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. I was trying to figure out who Frank was talking about when he was describing all those things, because you asked my wife, it's something totally different. So my name is Bo Cheney. I'm originally from Chicago, but I've been here for about 20 years. I taught in the school district. I went back and got my master's. My wife and I opened a school, CICS Patriots, years ago. And then I went to the fire department. I've been with the fire department for about 15 years, and I have 5 more years, and then I can kind of go back to being a kid again and retire and do what I want to do. So I wrote this book, and I'll leave one for you guys. This book was a project that I worked on. I started mentoring at Auburn High School and at Roosevelt, and after mentoring, I kind of wanted to go back and talk to kids about obtainable careers. So I created a book, and this book on the front page are my kids, Rob and Rocky, this is their names, and they walk to school and they talk about things that they want to be when they grow up. So I'll just give you a little bit. Rakim says he wants to be a rapper because that's what he sees on TV, and then Rob gives him other career options such as fire department, police department, and mailman. The second book will be to walk home and they'll see someone working on a building and they'll talk about the trades. The third book is anti-bullying. The books are already done and I'm just getting them out. So far, I've been across this region in Rockford. I've been in Wisconsin. I just came back from the Summit on Young Black Youth in Milwaukee. I've been to Vegas. I got Denver planned to go, Iowa. So I've been all over doing it, and this is just something that I enjoy doing. I just want to lay all the options out for young people so they'll have like a buffet of career options because nobody really laid that out to me. So that's about it. If you guys want the book, I'll leave it here. It has all my information in it. Do you guys have any questions for me?
I see a couple hands pop up. I'll go to Mrs. Red and then Mrs. Gorel. Mrs. Red.
Where can we purchase a book?
The books can be purchased on Amazon or robandrocky.com. Everything is Rob and Rocky. So robandrocky.com or robandrocky@gmail is my email address.
Thank you.
We'll send everybody a link for sure. Mrs. Gorel.
Congratulations. I'm glad someone has finally taken the initiative to get out there and start leading our young people early in life.
Right.
Thank you, and I congratulate you.
I appreciate it.
Well, thank you again, Bo. Really appreciate you being here. Let's give him a hand if that's all right. Man, I wouldn't want to follow that cool guy. But the next gentleman we have is going to give us a very important update on, I think, one of the coolest partnerships I've seen the county be a part of in the last couple years. Glenn Trommels is the IT director for the city of Rockford. He, along with others, including our staff and staffs at some of the other public entities, are bringing back something that Mr. Booker pointed out to me early on, is that there was a time when area law enforcement agencies shared police records. Then we stopped, and now, thanks to expertise and the hard work and partnership of a lot of our law enforcement agencies and staff, such as Glenn, I know Carla's been involved, Gus from the county, we are in the process, thanks to board approval last October, of going back to sharing police records, which will be a strategic piece to creating a safer community. So with that, and with respect to the fact we have new board members, we're going to bring Glenn in, have him give a quick update, remind everybody why this is occurring, and also just answer any quick questions. Again, this is something that's been talked about for a year. The board set it in motion, I believe, at the end of the fiscal year before the change in the board. But it's a really important partnership that will be in place, and he'll kind of review the timeline. Mr. Trommels.
Thank you, Chairman. First of all, I just want to acknowledge that I've never been introduced as the poor sap before, so I appreciate that. I'm just joking. Again, my name is Glenn Trommels. I'm IT Director for the City of Rockford. I'm going to be real brief. I know you have a full agenda tonight. Just wanted to bring you up to date, just level set everyone on what this project is and give you an update on where we're at. So really, as the chairman mentioned, the scope of this project is to bring a lot of law enforcement agencies together. It's actually broader than that. We're actually replacing the computer-aided dispatch systems at both 911 centers, the one in Rockford and the Winnebago County 911 Center. We wanted to move back to this, or move to a shared records management system. Everyone today pretty much is a silo of information. sharing information between law enforcement agencies very, very difficult. So we wanted to bring all law enforcement agencies together to share information. Not a new concept. This has been done around the United States many times. We're just a little bit late to the game. And we think by sharing information across law enforcement agencies, it'll lead to better public safety, and of course, pooling our limited financial resources together will save some money. So again, replacing the computer-aided dispatch systems at both 911 centers, replacing the records management systems for 12 police agencies in Winnebago County. The mobile systems in the squads and the fire apparatus. And as part of that, to support all that, we're building brand new infrastructure to host all that. In addition, we have to make sure this stuff keeps up and going, so we're building a disaster recovery system. Total project budget for the whole thing, about $4.5 million. Okay, so where are we at in this project? The project actually started a couple years ago with the concept and review of needs and what the benefits would be for our county. Fast forward to today, we've actually kicked off the project with the vendor February this year. We expect the project to take about a year to complete, to get all that done. All municipalities, we created an IGA between the city of Rockford and all of the other municipalities that are joining. Winnebago County, as you remember, that ran through the IGA last October. You approved the IGA with the city of Rockford. So we've got all the law enforcement agencies on board. And to date, our efforts have really been around building the foundation. So got to set up a lot of servers and storage, network. That's almost complete. Vendor next week is actually going to be setting up all the servers, configuring them. We'll start doing some testing. Have a lot of GIS data to work on. It's the system very dependent on GIS data, addressing street center lines. Staff's been doing a lot of work doing that cleanup, and we've been focusing on the CAD piece of this right now. As you know, when you make when you have an emergency, you make a call to 911. All that information goes into CAD first, and then filters down to a police records management system. So CAD is the starting point, and that's where we've been putting all of our efforts to date. Another thing, Representative Sosnowski had offered a grant in Winnebago County, about $75,000. Good news, I have a way to spend that money. So we're moving along in that process. We got notified last week that we've passed the first hurdle in that grant process. They expect to make an announcement in another month or two, whether we're going to get that $75,000.
If we receive that, Mr. Trommels, that would be spread across multiple agencies, not to any one particular agency, correct?
Correct, thank you. Yeah, so we'll allocate that to the project, and we've got a funding formula for the whole project. And so we'll just apply that same funding formula to the grant if we're lucky enough to get that. It's still early in the project, but we're on schedule. Again, we've had a lot of work to do in setting up the infrastructure. It's been quite an effort for my staff, but we're on schedule and no surprises yet on the project. All the hardware that we had budgeted is coming in pretty much on budget. I think I'm about 5% under budget right now. But still early in the project, and projects this big, this many entities, there's always surprises that come up. But as of right now, we're on budget. I promised to keep it really brief, and I did. Any questions for me?
Any questions for Mr. Trommels regarding shared records? Mr. McDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just real quick, I noticed that there was new mobile radios included. Is that just for the city? Is that city, county? How many agencies are the new radios spread out across?
I apologize I wasn't clear on that slide. So when I referred to mobile, that's not radios, that's the software that goes on the laptops and all the squads. So I apologize if I wasn't clear on that slide.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, and thank God we're not having another radio discussion. Thank you, Mr. McDonald. I'm glad that got clarified. Any other questions for Mr. Trommels? If you ever want to get further updates, we certainly could drive that to Mr. Booker's Public Safety Committee appreciate all the work you've done. I know Carla and Gus have done a great job on that from our end, and I think this is a big deal for public safety long-term. So thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Chairman.
Appreciate your time. Let's give him a hand if that's okay. Thank you very, very much again. Our next item of business is public comment. And before I read the disclaimer, I'm going to ask Ginger Haas from New Milford to come up. She's part of their neighborhood watch group, and she wants to talk about the landfill. There's been a few emails exchanged, I believe, with myself, Mr. Kelly, who's the district rep, and I believe Carla's been on that as well. Come on up, ladies. And thank you very much for giving us some of your time, sharing your thoughts on the landfill. I'm going to have a couple comments on the landfill and garbage around the landfill during the chairman's report. Ginger, thank you very much for being here, and you got 3 minutes. Let me just read this, or else our lawyer gets mad at me, okay? Yes, sir. Comments shall be limited to 3 minutes. Speakers may not address zoning matter which is pending before the ZBA, zoning committee, or the county board. Personnel matters or pending or threatened litigation may not be addressed in open session. An individual may speak a maximum of 3 times per calendar year on the same topic. This prohibition shall include the repetition of the same topic in a statement of what is purported to be a different topic. Personal attacks or inappropriate language of any sort will not be tolerated. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So we're from the New Milford Neighborhood Watch. She actually spearheads the Neighborhood Watch, and lately with the landfill, the smell has been waking us up at night. We're finding it staying in, like the other day I went to my daughter's school and it was in her book bag. I could smell it in her locker. I took my car in and they called me and wanted to discuss the warranty because they thought I had taken it out of the country, because when they turn it on, the smell comes and it's so strong. We're not just talking about, does this landfill smell? We're talking about it comes in at night and it wakes us up. Many of us are having nauseating headaches. It's just not a normal smell. It started about last September. So we've been in pretty constant contact with the EPA and found out there are multiple issues and out of compliance issues with this landfill. The one I'm more familiar with is the one in Winnebago County, but I understand they almost back up to another one in Ogle County. So we don't have an iron curtain to say this is where this odor comes from. But the concern is grave. It's not something that's going to stay in New Milford, because from what we understand, we probably have more questions than answers for you. Is it growing? Has our little local landfill become the biggest landfill in the United States? Because we understand that's the goal. And it's a pretty small area, especially when they're backed up back to back with 2 landfills. So what do we do to protect ourselves?
Sure. We're going to give you 3 minutes to address the group with your thoughts or any questions you'd like to see addressed. We may not have those immediate answers for you tonight, but we'd certainly give you the opportunity to share questions you'd like to see considered and addressed, in addition to any other thoughts you have.
Okay, so fair enough. So I emailed those to yourself and
Yes,
Mr.
ma'am.
Kelly. And thank you. I like to hear myself talk, and I'm sick of hearing myself. I've called you so many times, and you've been very responsive. Just so has the EPA. However, nothing's changing. These smells woke us up again last night. I think we're both exhausted.
This morning, yes.
And it's bad. So are we aware of the recent increases in garbage intake, particularly like the last 6 months? Has it been growing year over year? Do they measure it by weight or volume? Do we have any limits on these landfills? Are there cubic yards that can only go into so many feet? I don't know how it's measured. I don't know the unit of measure. I don't know landfill management. But this company isn't even local, but we're giving them our backyard. Do we measure that? Do we cap it? Do we limit it? And we've looked at the Freedom of Information Act, and it does seem to exponentially have grown the last 3 years for sure. I'm pretty sure 2018, especially these last 6 months and then going into 2019, because of the odors, we're going to see some exponential growth in, like I said, I don't know if it's by weight, by tonnage, by truckload, but the odors are apparent. The other thing is the hazards, have they ever been measured by having 2 landfills back to back so close together, but being governed by 2 different counties? I understand the EPA umbrellas all of it, but are our contracts limited? How big can these 2 landfills get in such a small area? Flint, Michigan had to start somewhere with no one looking. If we have 2 parents that don't speak, we don't have an iron curtain to stop these landfills from coming over into our area. And then last, we understand there's a host revenue fee of, it's sounds like a penance to me of $4 million, if I'm correct. Is that a flat fee? We're not really all that concerned. We can't breathe money. But if these landfills are growing so much, did we agree to that because they're going to grow the amount of money that's being brought in per truckload, per cubic yard? Those are my concerns. I think the neighborhood had
Yes,
others.
they are, and they've just gotten massive. I lived out there from 1979 to 1983, and I never remember smelling that. And then we moved back out there in 1993, and we're still out there, and they're just huge. They're massive, and the smell is just horrendous.
So we're at our 3-minute mark, so I'm going to give you my number, and we're going to talk tomorrow on a couple of items. I know there's some follow-up that's in play, but I'm glad you came tonight, and this is something that's probably not a new topic for some of our veteran board members, but at the same time, it's important, and I'll comment on it in Chairman's remarks.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ginger. Next item of business would be meeting minutes. May I please have a motion to approve the February 28th, 2019 minutes and also lay over the March 14th, 2019 minutes? I have a motion by Mr. Hoffman. Thank you. May I get a second? Second by Mr. Boomer, Mr. Billich, and Mr. Neighbors. The minutes are before the board. Any comments on the minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Are there any opposed? We've passed the minutes. Thank you very much. Next item of business is announcements and communications. Clerk Gummow.
Mr. Chairman, the items listed below were received as correspondence.
And we'll place those on file. Thank you very much, Clerk Gummow. Next item of business, board member correspondence. Any board member comments tonight? We'll start my left to right. Mr. Grohl.
Thank you, Chairman. Just want to let the public know that April 9th, Tuesday at 6:30, myself and Mr. Hoffman will be hosting the Rolling Green Neighborhood Association meeting. And at that meeting, we'll be having our Animal Services Director, Brett Frazier, out to discuss the great story that is going on out at Animal Services, the current contract and the contract coming before the city. We will also have from RPC explaining the land bank to the Neighborhood Association will be Julia Halstead and Eric Setter. And also we will have a representative from the city of Rockford to discuss the new changes to the water bill about the payment schedule there, and just kind of explain and answer questions for the folks there. So just want to let everybody know that, and hopefully the other neighborhood groups that our members are associated with can kind of get out our story about animal services and the great work that Mr. Frazier is doing out there. And that's it. Thank you.
Mr. Grohl, if you don't mind to follow up, what was the date on that Rolling Green Neighborhood Association meeting?
Yeah, be Tuesday, April 9th at 6:30, Broadway Covenant Church. I don't know the address right offhand. Sorry.
It's right off of...
Right, Broadway, Eastmoreland.
Yep.
Yep, just west of Eastmoreland on Broadway.
Thank you very much, Mr. Grohl. I saw another hand or two up. Working across, I'll go Mr. McDonald, then Mrs. Crosby. Mr. McDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Unfortunately, I'm sure most of you have heard the Illinois State Police Department lost another law enforcement officer this afternoon or today in Freeport. I would just like to use this time publicly to ask Sheriff Caruana and Chief O'Shea to direct their people to enforce Scott's law. Let's make sure that we're pulling the people over. I know that their resources are already stretched thin where they probably can't have another car sitting on a traffic stop or something like that, but we need to come up with a plan on how we can identify the people who are not yielding to emergency vehicles, including fire. I would just ask the chief and the sheriff both to come up with something and push on these cell phone laws, make sure we're enforcing Scott's law. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, and I'm sure there's at least one person in this room. Give us the 20-second overview of Scott's law, if that's okay, Mr. McDonald.
I apologize. Scott's law is an Illinois state law that states that anytime you see law enforcement, fire, anything on the side of the road, you must either slow down or move to the other lane to avoid anything. But either way it works. I've been on 251 and I-90 where they don't slow down and it scares the crap out of you as they come blowing by you. Please slow down and move over and follow Scott's law.
Thank you very much, Mr. McDonald. Mrs. Crosby.
I think we all here owe Jim Webster some thanks in that he admonished us not to call the question too early. We don't want to squelch debate, and I thought it was very prudent of him to remind us that we want to make sure that we have enough debate so when we do vote, everyone is comfortable with the debate that's taken place. So Jim Webster, I thank you for your wisdom, and we appreciate it.
Thank you, Mrs. Crosby. I think I saw a hand up over here, and then I think there was one more hand up. Mr. Booker.
Thank you, Chairman. A resident in my district requested that I read or pass on her frustration and asked me to bring this up. Am I allowed to do that?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. She says...
unless it's like a personnel-related matter or something, okay, absolutely.
Right. I cannot possibly articulate my disgust with the Winnebago County Board and the continuous self-centered, less than professional infighting over what appears to be inability to all play together in the same sandbox. Why would any new business or families even consider Winnebago County for relocating with this ongoing insidious inability to work together to solve the myriad of problems that we have to be addressed? I am hopeful that you and other board members can help to be a voice of reason and help with the development of a collegial spirit of cooperative solutions to the issues that we all face as taxpayers, and that this slap in the face of democracy will cease. Thank you so much for your service to the county, and hopefully as a key stakeholder in moving the group forward towards solutions-based leadership. Thanks so much. Julie Nichols, Consumer Economics teacher, retired. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Booker. I believe I saw a hand up in the middle after I went to Mr. Booker. Mr. Webster, then Mr. Salgado. Mr. Webster.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to follow up on what Keith said. And it's not just police and fire, it's any emergency vehicles with those flashing lights on now. Those could be the record drivers that are out there to have to tow that car off the side of the road. It could be county highway workers, and it could be IDOT workers as well. One of their trucks got whacked down in central Illinois yesterday, and there were no fatalities, but one of those trucks got rear-ended when there was a convoy of them on the road patching potholes, and you could see the lights from them for a mile back, and some sleepy driver, inattentive driver, whatever, piled into one of them in the middle of that scene there. So, and as for calling the questions, what I tried to get across to you before there was don't be hasty to call the question, but on the other hand, when that debate gets to be repetitious and the same things are being said over again, maybe in a different fashion, but the same way, yes, by all means then, I wouldn't stop anyone from, or interfere with anyone doing that then. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Webster. Mr. Salgado.
Yes, I just want to give kudos to Scott Lenwowski at Veterans Memorial Hall. He actually stepped up. Yesterday we had an event there through Collins Aerospace. They brought in Jazz Booth, a veteran that helps fight homelessness. He stepped up to the plate with a short time of notice and got us the place and actually accommodated us. So I just want to give kudos to our staff members at the Winnebago County that make things happen every single day. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Salgado. Any other comments by board members? Seeing none, I'll move on to Chairman's report. I got a couple of items here. The first is I want to thank Dr. Martell, Mr. McDonald in particular, Mr. Dornbush, as well as, and the Sheriff's Department for the work on the flood, working on the flood issues, in particular in McChesney Park's been just hammered. You're going to get an email tonight from me that covers the Chairman's report. Number 6 on that is the information that was released by Dr. Martell's office related to referring constituents to the Red Cross. There's also been discussion about the voluntary buyout program for flood-prone properties, and there's going to be information in your email tonight on that. And it's we make it real simple. Just if you get the call, That way you can get it off your plate and get people helped and then going in the right direction, so they're not wasting time going to the wrong place and losing time doing it. So thank you again, Mr. McDonald. I know you've been very involved with that, Dr. Martell, Mr. Dornbush. Tomorrow, I believe Mr. Westcott is joining as well in this event, the National Vietnam War Veterans Day. Tomorrow, Friday, March 29th, Loves Park, the city of Loves Park's having an event, and I believe there's going to be a ceremony at about 1:45. Myself or Mr. Westcott will be reading a proclamation, but it's certainly an important event and one that's been on our radar for some time, and hope to see you there. One of the items I wanted to talk about was already alluded to tonight, and that's the landfill. We've had a larger number than average calls at this time of year related to garbage off of I-39 and Baxter Road from a range of folks who live in that area, community leaders who live on the north end of Winnebago County who are concerned about that area is a gateway to our region, to Rockford, to Winnebago County. And there's concerns that there's been, of course, over the course of the winter, but even when it's not springtime, there's garbage on the interstate and also off Baxter Road that really is not a good front porch for our incredible county. What we're going to be doing in early April is bringing together, this is like a lot of problems that touch government. Everybody's in charge and nobody's in charge. The landfill has a role to play. The haulers bringing garbage from other communities into our community to dump, they have a major role to play in locking down their loads. IDOT, the Highway Department will be at the meeting, as well as IDOT. State Police, and I believe the Sheriff's Department will be represented from an enforcement standpoint, just to talk about what can we do in the short term to address this issue, and then what can we do so that we don't have this annual frustration and ongoing frustration that I think many in Mr. Kelly's district have had. But when you have mayors and community leaders in other parts of the region saying, we have an incredible community and it's beautiful, but when you enter it this way, especially at this time of year, it doesn't present what is all good about our community the right way. So we're going to have to put our heads together and not point fingers, but say, what can we do individually and collectively around that issue? Just wanted to give you a heads up, we'll report back. On the economic development front, not a whole lot, some really good discussions in the Economic Development Committee. A couple things that have been floating that have been kind of quiet, and there's no huge update, but I don't want you to say you didn't hear this, but it was in the news back a couple of months ago about the potential hotel in Rockton. No major update, but there may be a tax abatement ask of the county that's been in the media, so I'm not breaking a confidence there. The program that we've referenced a couple times is going to be coming to the county to work on the agreement. That's the John Phelps NICDC 12-bank small business development and blight reduction program where the county is going to be asked for $100,000 of host fees for 2 years and then pay that back with 1% interest over 5 is what the initial thoughts were. That has been a program where the 12 banks in the community have come together, pooled about $3.5 million for small business development and blight reduction initiatives. We do not have the agreement to run through staff and legal. We are going to piggyback off the City of Rockford's agreement. That doesn't mean it's their agreement that we inherit. That's just our starting point in however we maneuver or revise it. This is one where it got announced because the bankers wanted to announce it and celebrate it, but the back end is the opportunity to officially participate in this is going to come with a little bit of delay. Didn't want there to be any confusion. Project Alpha is one that's been in the news for several months. They have yet to provide an update back to our community. That was the Tier 1 auto manufacturer looking at multiple sites. I have no update other than there was no update. That would be good for economic development for now. The last thing is tonight there's going to be strategic planning, shared values, I think is on the operations committee. Just so there's no discussion or confusion around process. We got in a weird spot where we had a new board coming in, an old board getting ready to go out, and we waited for the new board to get in. Then the new year hit, and we've been a little bit delayed getting that to you. This is a very important discussion, in my opinion. The cost of the strategic planning process with the NIU Center for Government Studies, I believe was in the $20,000 to $25,000 range. It was approved 2 budget cycles ago. ahead of time by the board through host fees. That was not for just a retreat for the board. That was for the entire multi-month effort. And excited about the discussion. I think it's one needed, and I'm glad that it's before the board for action tonight. Lastly, I wanted to speak respectfully but very directly about, I think, an important item that's, again, before the board and the community, and it's related to the ordinance that the board will be discussing here shortly. And I wanted to read into record some comments. I mean no disrespect if we happen to disagree. I understand people of goodwill can look at things from different angles, and I ran to be part of the discussion and want to share some thoughts here tonight. I'll be as brief as I possibly can. Why tonight's county board vote on the 9th attempted ordinance change to the chairman's role matters to the 285,000 citizens of Winnebago County. Here's what I think. We will not close the gap between the community we are and the community we're capable of becoming if election results can be overruled by a group of an elected body if they disagree with the outcome. Elections matter. They shouldn't be re-engineered via loophole. There is no authority that should silence the voters of Winnebago County. Shifting major levels of responsibility of an elected official midterm to a board of 20 is not a recipe for more accountable government, no matter how capable and outstanding those particular board members may actually be. Elections matter. What is also troubling is that at least some of the most of the folks involved in creation of this ordinance want to remain a silent contributor and prefer to operate in the shadows. These people likely have something to gain personally or an axe to grind politically. Perhaps that is why some have been comfortable resorting to smearing and boogeyman tactics. Nevertheless, regardless of who the chairman is, chairmans come and go. Major overhauls to government structure should align with election cycles and should not include input from people, and should involve input from people paying the bill, which is our citizens. If this 9th attempted change to the ordinance passes, then the message is clear. Only 11 board member votes or more, not the 100,000 voters who spoke in 2016, for a particular person to do a specific job for 4 years. Other communities, even ones who have similar policy disagreements as we occasionally do, most certainly do not do business like this, especially midterm. Community engagement via referendum makes sense, and regardless of outcome, we will have a more aligned effect if we work together across stakeholders. Polling shows that the primary reason most people fail to vote on election day is they don't think it matters, that there is no difference between candidates, or that the things won't change regardless of who wins. I am concerned that intentionally snuffing out basic checks and balances in the administration also deepens distrust people have in their government, especially considering we are still rebuilding trust we lost over the Sally Clausen issue under the prior administration. Concentrating large amounts of unchecked power in a non-elected individual, regardless of how incredibly capable that person may or may not be, is not common or best practice. Please note, there is a larger role than ever for professional staff in working with this board. That was true going into 2019. That does not mean we do not need to improve. That does not mean I don't need to improve. And that does not mean we cannot do better. To that end, and although there has been an endless obsession with this ordinance, it does not seem that this change or the prior change on January 24th was well thought through. To that end, it is important to focus on both and not either or thinking. The role of a board member and chairman are important, but also somewhat different at times. It is not an either or proposition. The role of professional staff and chairman are important and also different at times as well. This is not an either or proposition. Thank you very much for the time to share that, and I'll be emailing this out this evening. With that, I will turn things over to Carla for the county administrator's report. Carla.
Thank you, Chairman. You should have all received an email today outlining what meetings will be held next week. I've also provided the committee chairman with memos on what we plan to do in the April meetings, so they have that information ahead of time. We will, at the next cycle, the second cycle in April, we'll be bringing the emergency notification system purchase forward. We've approached the city about cost sharing in that system, but we're in need to go ahead with that, whether or not they decide to go along with us. We found money in the IT budget to purchase that this year, and then we'll also be including Tiana in some marketing to the citizens in order to sign up for the system and receive the notifications that are put out. We continue, Chris and I, to work on the host fee policy. That'll likely come sometime in April or early May. But for the Economic Development Committee meeting next week, we'll be bringing forward the annual awards for approval that have been suggested by the chairman and board members. I'm glad to report that today our River Bluff census was 183 total, 180 in beds and 3 with bed holds. Our administrator there is out on medical leave, so we have an interim administrator that will be starting on Monday to cover for her until she returns. We now are nearly final with the emergency management IGA with the city. They'll have an employee that'll take the place of the employee that was in the sheriff's department. They're having the state granting agency give a final look at that IGA, and then we'll be bringing that forward. Molly and her team now have our payroll check stubs and the employee self-service. The great thing about that is that these are acceptable for mortgage applications or income verifications, so you don't have to go directly to finance if you're in need of those pay stubs to use for those purposes. During the audit, we found that there's a fund, it's called a working cash fund, that's had a stable balance of a little over $600,000, probably since the mid-'80s. It was established by a levy in the mid-'70s, and the purpose of that fund was to loan money to other funds if they were short on money until they received their property taxes. Because we maintain certain reserve levels, we don't feel that that fund is needing to sit there any longer, and we'll be bringing